Today is a casual pod. Today, Morgan is alone. My producer is out of town. There's some doggies in the studio. We're all just chilling. So welcome back to another episode of My Body, My Jokes. I'm Morgan Gallo. I'm a comedian. I'm a woman. I'm so many other things. How could I possibly list them all? I'm here in Unedited Studios. I love this place. You guys know that. You hear it all the time. We're in Denver. I love Denver. And today I decided that I am going to tell you my story. And the reason I started this podcast is kind of to talk a little bit about, obviously, my eating disorder and the shit I've been through, and being a comedian and getting other women's opinions and perspectives on body positivity and things. But through the first, handful of episodes, you guys have heard anecdotes about my life, things that have happened with my family, how I deal with recovery, but I haven't fully divulged every detail of my story and how I got here. So today's episode is dedicated to me telling you exactly how I got here. This is like one of those rewind moments in a movie when it's like the movie opens and then there's a girl like laying on a train track and like the train is coming and it freezes and she goes, "I bet you're wondering how I got here, but first I need to take you back." And then it's like a rewind and then you get to the part again in the movie like an hour later and you're like, "Oh my God, this is where the movie started." So that's what we're doing today. And if you like the podcast, I would be indebted to you forever if you decided to rate and review on Spotify and Apple. I think Apple has ratings, and like and subscribe on YouTube, because that is how I get the message out. That is how I get to reach more people and hopefully help some people. And yeah, it's super easy. All you have to do is click, 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever you want to do, and then you're done. So that's pretty much it. But I will tell you today where it all began. So I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. And if you don't know that area, it is a city outside of Denver that is nestled against the mountains. It's very beautiful. It's very pristine. It's very thin and very white and very affluent. The people that live there tend to be white people who are pretty wealthy and liberal leaning. And don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful place to grow up, but definitely has a certain culture. And growing up as a curvy Hispanic-ish woman, I didn't really fit in that well. I was always a chubbier kid. I was always a little bit bigger than everyone else. And then at some points, a lot bigger than everyone else. And so I was kind of an outsider from being a child. And then as I grew up, I dealt with some like weird backhanded bullying that I didn't realize was bullying, I think, until I got older. You know, that type of bullying that in the moment it just feels really like passive aggressive and almost like vague. So you can't really say that you're being bullied. But when you look back on it, you're like, oh no, that person was like out to get me. Like they weren't shoving my face in a locker or giving me a swirly, you know what I mean? But they were definitely saying some things that were very pointed and meant to hurt. So I had a lot of comments made to me about my body from my dance teachers, my parents. There were sometimes, my friends would come over and try on my jeans when I was 12 and they'd laugh at how big they were on them because I was a size, 10 and maybe they were a size like 4. I don't know what the sizes were back then, but like it was very clear that I was different. And at that time, in the 2000s, being big was really like the worst thing a woman can be. I mean, Jessica Simpson was like exalted for being fat when she was a size 4, and she, I think, had just like given birth to her son or something. Like it was a different time. So anyway, that was my childhood. And then the springtime of 7th grade, everyone's favorite time of their life. They're oily, they're pimply, they're horny for weird reasons. I was 13 years old and all of my friends stopped talking to me because I had called a girl a bitch and they all agreed that she was a bitch. And then it turns out that they all went to that girl and acted as if I had called her a bitch and it wasn't all of us calling her a bitch. So it was a very weird situation. Anyway, they stopped talking to me. I had no friends at school. The last 2 months of my 7th grade year were really depressing. I didn't have anyone to talk to. No one would talk to me. And I found this diet book on the kitchen counter one day. And it should be noted that my mom is a chronic dieter. She was a firefighter, a triathlete, a swim coach. She was always, always, always obsessed with exercise, her body, how she looked, and what she was putting in her body. So she had this diet book, and it was called like Eat This, Not That. And I think people remember that book. I looked it up the other day, and now it's called like Eat This, Not That, like the worldview of food, or it was some weird subtitle. But it basically was a book where each page was like a photo of 2 different foods. And it would literally just say, don't eat this banana, eat an apple. And it would compare like the banana has however many grams of sugar and this many carbs, but the apple has this many grams of sugar and carbs. And that's why it's better for you. And at that time in my life at 13, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about food and where it came from and like what it meant to eat healthy. I just kind of always ate what my parents put in front of me, which usually was very healthy. My mom always cooked like chicken, rice, vegetables. You know, all the food groups were present. So to me, learning this information, I was like, oh my God, you know, I've been eating bananas my whole life. Like, holy fuck, I should not be eating bananas. And then there were sections about, you know, you should only be eating 15 grams of sugar a day. That's a fact I remember very vividly because 15 grams of sugar is such a small amount and your body runs on glucose and needs that. So I don't know where that number came from. But I read this book and I took it as gospel. And I just started looking at nutrition labels on everything because to me it was kind of like a game. I was like, ooh, how can I get the least grams of sugar? It kept me entertained. I was dancing at the time. I was finishing out 7th grade. I was like lonely. So to me, that it was like my game of the day. It's like, how many, you know, grams can I rack up? How many grams can I like throw away or whatever? So I started doing that. And I quickly started losing weight. Like I started weighing myself every week. And trigger warning, I'm going to talk about weight and numbers a little bit. The first week that I had done it, I lost 7 pounds in 7 days. And again, I was 13 years old. Like at that time, I was like, I had my cycle. I was going through puberty. Like I had developed pretty early. So I was like all of a sudden just losing weight. And then week after week, I was posting it on my, like a Post-it note on my room. And it would be like, I'd lose 7 pounds and then I'd lose 3 pounds and then I'd lose 2 pounds and then maybe I'd plateau. But I was consistently going down each week. And as the weight came off and I dove deeper into the book, I really started thinking, oh, well, I have hacked the system. Clearly, I know something that no one else does, and all I have to do is do the math on my food every day, and I will be thin and beautiful. And that's literally what I did the whole summer of 2009, or maybe it was 2008. I don't remember. And I lost 40 pounds as a 13-year-old girl. And I started weighing at 160 pounds. I was 160 pounds, 5'6", which is pretty much where I'm at now, I think. I don't weigh myself anymore, but I'm assuming that's where my body sits at. And I lost all this weight. I go back to school, and I was met with the most insane praise and love and admiration from not only the girls in my grade, but all of a sudden boys really wanted to date me. They wanted to hang out with me. I started learning how to use makeup. I started wearing low-rise jeans and like tight t-shirts, and I couldn't do that before, you know, because I had a belly and I was embarrassed and my boobs got way smaller. And I felt like I had completely transformed who I was. And it was the highest high I had ever felt at that time. And so I kept chasing that idea of just losing weight. I didn't have like a goal weight. I didn't understand that diets were temporary and that they weren't a lifelong thing. So I had gotten to, you know, I got to 121.8 pounds. That was my smallest I'd ever been. And for my stature and for how I'm built, I was very frail and thin, and my clothes were hanging off of me. and I looked kind of sickly. And my mom was like, okay, clearly, like, I think you're maybe going down the wrong path. Like, let's get you on like a realistic plan. And to her, that was Weight Watchers. And I could do a whole episode on how fucked up Weight Watchers is, and I probably will in the future. But for now, let's just say it is like every Karen you've ever met, she's part of Weight Watchers. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it is a horrible program. They act as if it's this big lifestyle change. It's really just another way to diet and to fuck up your relationship with food. But anyway, I go to Weight Watchers. I'm trying to learn how to eat, whatever that means, but I'm clearly on a diet still because Weight Watchers is about losing weight. And I can't for the life of me understand why a grown woman checking me in at the kiosk of a Weight Watchers store is looking at a 13-year-old who weighs basically 120 pounds and thinking, oh yeah, she can join the diet program. Like, I wasn't even put on a maintenance plan. I was put on the full on like adult female diet. Right? They calculate your points. You learn your points. And when I was on this Weight Watchers program, this was, the beginning of my 8th grade year. I'm thin. People love me. My friends are my friends again. I had a boyfriend that I'd met over the summer. He was 2 years older than me. I was hot shit. Like, I was on top of the world, dude. But as I did Weight Watchers, I learned that they had this system where you had a certain amount of points that you could eat per day. And then throughout the week, there was an amount of points that you could spread throughout the day. Or if you had like a special occasion and you wanted to spend it on one night, you could. So for example, I think I had like 21 points every day I was allowed to eat. And then for the whole week, I had an extra 40 that I could spread throughout the week. So every day I had 21 points plus whatever fraction 40 divided by 7 was. And I had this brilliant idea. I was like, oh, well, what if I ate my 21 points every day? Or what if, in fact, I ate less than my 21 points every day? And then one day a week, I got to just eat whatever the fuck I wanted. And I could eat all of those extra points in one day. And when I tell you, I thought that I was a genius, I thought I was a fucking genius. Like, this was my way to, again, hack the system. And so I started doing that. I started starving myself more and more during the weekdays so that on Saturday, when I weighed myself in, I could spend the rest of the day getting Starbucks, eating whatever I wanted at home, sneaking food to my room so that I had food to eat later that my mom wouldn't know about. And this continued into my 8th grade year. And this started the infamous binge restrict cycle. If you don't know what that is, the binge restrict cycle is a phrase that a lot of eating disorder recovery or diet culture adjacent people use to describe the cycle that your body goes through when you restrict, which is just another word to say, diet, starve yourself, whatever. Any restriction of food intake. You restrict yourself for a certain amount of time, and then your body is like, hey, I need food. Like, you got to feed me. So then you binge. Sometimes because of emotional turmoil. Sometimes because your body literally can't take it anymore. And for me, it was the latter. I was so hungry every day that I went to bed that come Saturday morning when I could weigh myself and see that I had done a quote unquote good job, whether it was losing another pound, whatever, the rest of the day I could eat whatever the fuck I wanted. And that was my system. And that was my system for 15 years. And it really backfired because when you do that, your body starts to try to protect itself. And I had lost my period. I didn't get my period anymore because I was fucking with my hormones. I was really faint all the time. Like, I was really lightheaded and I was constantly having problems concentrating in school. I would literally sit in class and dream about Cold Stone ice cream or like fries or something so random. I would just sit there and like wait until Saturday came. And so my body started to change a little bit because at one point I couldn't do the cycle anymore. I couldn't keep doing this starve for 6 days, binge for 1 day. It started to feel like I needed to binge longer because my body needed food. And so sometimes I would starve myself for 6 days and then I'd have 2 binge days. And then I would even starve myself more for the next 6 days because I felt guilty about those 2 days. And then the next binge time I would go would be 3 days. And then the ratio kept moving to the point where eventually I was restricting and binging for the same amount of time. And it turned into like weeks on weeks on weeks on months. And I would restrict for a month straight and then I would like binge for a month straight. And it was awful. And I got into high school. I was on the POMS team, the dance team. And I started gaining weight really quickly because I was dancing all the time and I was hungry. And so I was trying to starve myself and restrict myself, but I was so hungry that I would overeat at night when I came home from practice because I was starving. I wasn't feeding myself. And then I got back to the point where I gained all the weight back that I had lost from when I was 13. So by the time I was like maybe 16 years old, I had gained all that weight back plus more. And that's what happens a lot of the time when you diet is you go through this huge weight loss and you're depriving your body a certain amount so that when you start eating normally again, your body's like, oh, hell yeah. Okay, we can go back to our weight set point. And your weight set point is the natural weight that your body sits at if you were to just never fuck with it ever. If you just grew up being a completely intuitive eater, never went on a diet, had a healthy relationship with food and exercise, whatever, your body has a set point it wants to sit at. So the rest of my high school was me on the POMS team, gaining weight like crazy and then losing weight like crazy. And my uniform didn't fit after freshman year. And that was really embarrassing because it was expensive. Cheer uniforms, POM uniforms are expensive. I couldn't afford another one. And I was on the team with a bunch of very thin girls. You know, Boulder is a very thin city. And I was the biggest girl on the team by a lot. And it got to the point where I had gained enough weight that it was like visibly noticeable to people who had known me from middle school or from freshman year. And I remember there were times where I, had a crush on a guy on like the football team or whatever. And my brother was on the football team. And sometimes I'd say to my brother, oh, do you know if this guy like has a girlfriend? Oh, do you think he'd like me? Blah, blah, blah. And my brother was kind of aloof. So, he didn't really do anything about it. But I remember one day, my mom was scolding me a little bit about the fact that I had gained weight and that I was eating a lot at dinner or whatever it was. And she admitted to me, Victor came up to me and said that the guy on the football team said that you were cute until you got fat. And my brother didn't want to tell me that, but he told my mom. And my mom used that as like a pawn to be like, look, it's bad what you're doing. People are noticing. And that really hurt me. And there was a lot of stuff that went on between my mom and I that I'll probably leave for another time because I'm still processing it. But there was a lot of encouragement of the eating disorder at home. There was a lot of scolding of the weight gain at home. And I didn't feel safe at home a lot. And then I had to go to school where I also felt unsafe. And I was exalted for looking the way I did. And no one wanted to be around me. No one wanted to date me. Obviously, I had friends. I wasn't this outcast because I was big. It was more that became a part of who I was. It wasn't just Morgan, the dancer, or Morgan, the whatever. It was, oh yeah, Morgan, the big girl on the POMS team. I remember one time there was this guy I really liked that I had such a tumultuous relationship with. He was a senior and I was a sophomore, and he was so weird to me, but I was complaining to a guy friend, hey, I really like this guy. And like, sometimes we go on dates and then he ignores me for weeks. Like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And he was about to like explain to me what was going on, but we had just sat down in biology class and the bell rang. So he had to stop talking. So he writes a note and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to write down in the note, and the note, it's going to say something about, oh, that guy has another girl or something happened or whatever. Like, I'm thinking he's going to give me the answer. I don't know why. And he slides me a note and it said, don't take this the wrong way, but you're a big girl and guys don't like big girls. And I was 16 when I read that note, and I was sitting in biology class, and then I had to sit next to him the rest of the class as if he hadn't just like blown up this bomb in front of my face about my body. And the best part about that guy, the best part about him is that he DM'd me a year ago and was like, "Oh my God, you're doing comedy. That's so sick. Haha, do you remember me?" And I said, "This is my fucking moment." And I responded and I said, "Yeah, I remember when you told me I was fat in biology class in sophomore year." And then he was like, so surprised. He was like, "Oh my God, did I actually do that? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. Well, that was such a dick move of mine." And I just left him on red because part of me is like, well, if you don't even remember it, then clearly you were doing a lot of other shitty stuff to people in high school and I don't want to talk to you. But that happened. High school sucked. I graduated. I went to college. College was a little tough. I stayed in the dorms. I learned about weed and I started smoking a lot of weed. And I lived in a single dorm because I wanted to be alone. I didn't want to have roommates. And I started smoking weed, and then I realized that weed gives you the munchies. And then I realized that if I binge while I smoke weed, I won't feel as full, and I can binge even more because the weed makes you not feel your hunger and fullness cues. So I started abusing marijuana in my dorm room alone. I'd go to class and then I'd come home. I'd smoke a bowl. I'd order, takeout or whatever. And I would just sit in my room and eat for hours. And I'd watch Grey's Anatomy or Friends or whatever. And I would do my homework and I gained a lot of weight again. And then I started dancing again and I went back and forth. And then going home for the rest of my college experience, I couldn't afford to live, out of my home in Boulder. It's very expensive. So after my freshman year, I gained all this weight. I go home. I know my mom is looking at me like, "Girl, you got to get it together." And I started dancing really hard again. I started training like crazy. There was a studio that I went back to with a bunch of kids that I used to dance with before I was in high school. And I would take 2 classes a day, sometimes 3. And it was the summertime. And again, I was like, you know what? This is my summer. I did it 4 or 5 summers ago. I'm going to do it again. And I fucking did it again. And I spent the entire summer focusing on losing weight and eating as little as possible. And I would go to dance and I would feel so tired and I'd feel like shit. And I would get injured and I would dance through the injuries because I thought it would make me stronger. And then going into my sophomore year, I was thin again. I was a different body than I was at 13 because I was older and I had a lot more muscle on me from dancing. So I weighed more, but I was still very small. And then I joined a dance crew where I danced like semi-professionally, I guess. And then I was teaching dance and then I was minoring in dance at school. So my life became dance and I loved it because I got to exercise all the time and burn calories, which meant that I could stay in this small body for as long as I could keep doing this. And I did it for the rest of college, sophomore, junior, senior year. I just danced all the time and I taught dance at several different studios and I got an internship. I was doing classes and I was literally eating like a 1/4 cup of almonds for lunch and an apple. And then I would complain to my dad about, "Oh, my stomach hurts. I don't know why." And my dad would ask me what I was eating and I would lie. And I'd say, "Oh, I have a sandwich and some almonds and an apple and some chips." And he's like, "Oh, well, maybe you're eating too much fiber with the apple." And he'd give me like some real advice. And meanwhile, I'm just thinking, no, I know it's because I'm not eating enough, but I don't care because I want to be thin. And that lasted for a while, but what goes up must come down or whatever. What goes down must come up in my case. And I had to stop dancing because I had to focus on school to graduate. I had to get an internship. I stopped dancing and I stopped teaching at the studios because I had to get this internship. My minor in dance was pretty much finished, so I didn't have the excuse of doing classes for school anymore. And I graduated and got a job and moved to Colorado Springs and did exactly what I did my freshman year of college. I just smoked weed at home by myself, binged to my heart's content. Sometimes I'd go the whole weekend without even leaving my apartment. I'd get home from my job on Friday, smoke a bowl, buy a bunch of groceries that I could binge on for the whole weekend. I'd just sleep in like crazy, get high all day, watch Grey's Anatomy, and then go to work on Monday feeling like shit because I didn't know anyone in Colorado Springs. I felt like it was the only thing I could control. And I was just really miserable, honestly. And after that, I kind of realized that I needed to get out of that situation. I was clearly not well. And I quit my job. I moved to Florida. And that's kind of where comedy started for me. I moved to Florida. I got this job. Went through a lot more phases of binging restricting. I went through a phase of going to Orange Theory at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then when the pandemic started, I convinced myself I was addicted to running, and I'd run every morning like 3 or 4 miles, and then I fucking hated it. And then I went through a weightlifting phase, and all I cared about was protein, protein, protein. And I went through many more phases of dieting. I even went back to Weight Watchers. That's how fucking desperate I was, is I went back to Weight Watchers like 10 years later because in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe it'll work the second time. And I started comedy and my life totally changed because when you start doing comedy, you start realizing how insane people are and how insane the world is. And I just kind of like figured out that if I could do this, I could be alone. I could control what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I could, control what I was eating on the road, or I could binge if I wanted to, if there was a comedy club that provided food. And it started to get really difficult to hide my binging and restricting because I was on stage all the time, and so you go on stage enough, people know what your body looks like. And then when it starts to change, they also notice that too. And thank God no one really ever said anything to me. The only time people said anything was if maybe I had like gone through a phase of losing weight and then someone was like, oh, if you lost weight, you look good. And then of course I'd be like, I did, thank you. And it'd be whatever. But I couldn't stop the cycle. I saw so many different therapists. I couldn't find anyone that would understand what I was going through. Because here's the thing about eating disorder recovery is that there are a lot of psychologists and nutritionists who will label themselves as experienced in eating disorder recovery or eating disorder coaching or something, but they're not actually qualified medical professionals that can genuinely help you push through this mental disease. Normally, it's just like a lady that's a psychologist and she's like 55 now, but oh, she had an eating disorder when she was a teenager and now she's fine, so she can help you with yours. And it's not the same thing at all. Or like one time I went to this nutritionist who claimed that she worked with people with eating disorders, and she was this very thin woman. And she was like a marathon runner, which is awesome, like good for her. But she clearly still had an eating disorder because I would tell her things and I would talk to her about food. And then she would tell me this information that even I knew was like, no, that's not right. Like one time I remember she let me like text her throughout the week if I had questions about food. And I told her that I ate pasta salad for lunch. And I texted her and I said, hey, I ate pasta salad for lunch. I'm feeling kind of guilty. I know that it's just carbs and it's okay, but I'm feeling guilty right now. And I'm thinking she's going to respond. She's going to be like, that's okay. You need carbs to survive. You're going to be fine. Don't think about it, whatever. And she responds and she goes, maybe you should just eat vegetables for dinner. That's what she said. That was her response. Her response to me telling her that I felt guilty for eating pasta salad as a nutritionist was, well, then maybe you should just eat vegetables for dinner. So I didn't see her a lot after that, and I stopped going to people that weren't like medically trained. And I can't remember what the I don't know what it's called, like the title or the acronym that goes after their name when they're like qualified as eating disorder professionals. But I stopped going to anyone that just on Psychology Today in their bio put like eating disorder experience or whatever, because it never actually means that they know how to help you. It really just means that they have a personal connection to it, which is great, but it's not helpful. And I got really lucky. I got really lucky because I started doing comedy and I started traveling around, and I had a guy that brought me to Colorado, and I was so excited to come to Colorado because I hadn't been here in like 4 years. And I did a show, and I hadn't done comedy in my home state ever. And so I came home and I did this show in Boulder, of all places. Boulder, the one place that fucking shaped me, forged me into this insecure little bitch that I am today. And I met the most amazing man that I've ever met in my life. And he's flexing behind the camera right now. I met my boyfriend, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me because he lived in Denver and I was in Florida still. But we started talking, and, you know, he slid into my DMs. He was like, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I'd love to stick my dick in you." And that's not what he said. He said something like, "You should come back and do comedy." And it was really cute. And we started talking, and I was in Florida for like 8 more months. And then I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. There was just too much that I couldn't deal with. My eating disorder was really bad. He didn't really know about it. I had to clue him in on the fact that I had an eating disorder. So thank God that I came out to Denver and my life completely changed because I got to start seeing my therapist that I saw in high school, who was part of a recovery center. She set me up with a nutritionist that is certified in health at every size and intuitive eating, and is very interested in helping people specifically with eating disorders, and like knows exactly how to talk to people like me and what not to say and what to say. And it's been a wild ride. And I lived in Denver for probably like 8 months before I actually started recovery. But I'm so fucking happy that I came out here because now I'm like, okay, kind of like I'm doing what I can. And the thing that made me start recovery was I went on tour last year, and it was super cool. And it was a really cool experience, but it also like really broke me down. And I did like 17 cities. I was opening for someone else who was awesome. And I just learned all the ins and outs of like what it's like to travel as a comic, the inner workings of like bookings and deals and performing for different audiences. And how does this material compare to people in Spokane versus Indianapolis? And I got home from the tour and I was like so broken. I was just... I completely like relapsed into my eating disorder. I was like binging all the time, or I was starving myself all the time. I mentally was not well. I was having relationship problems, and I just was like, this is not who I want to be. And so my therapist was like, you know, I'd been seeing her for a few months by then, and she was like, "So what do you want to do about your eating disorder?" And I remember she asked me that, and it was such a wake-up call that I had been seeing this therapist for 3 months who's like certified in eating disorder recovery, and yet I wasn't doing anything to help myself recover. So finally she had to look at me and be like, "What do you want to do about this? Like, what are we doing here? You're spending a lot of money to be here. What are we doing?" And I started crying, and I admitted to her, I was like, I want to recover. Like, I don't want to be this comedian that's like a clown on stage and then crying in the green room. I don't want to feel disgusting all the time because I can't stop eating, or, you know, have acid reflux because I'm starving myself or whatever. And so she sets me up with a nutritionist, and I started like a week after Thanksgiving of 2023. And it's been some wild shit. Something they don't tell you about recovery is that not only are you recovering from an eating disorder, but you're also kind of recovering from like the trauma that caused the eating disorder. And so it's opening up a lot of wounds that have scabbed over. So it's been a little painful to deal with that. But I feel like I'm doing okay. You know, I got to a point this year where I was like, I need to stop doing comedy for a little bit and focus on me and really dive into recovery. And so I did that, and I'm still doing that. And then I was like, I want to talk about this. Like, I want to tell people what this is like. I want to show people, you know, how the sausage is made while I'm doing it, and not just talk about it 10 years from now when I'm recovered. So I had the idea for this podcast and brainstormed it back and forth with my boyfriend a lot and my friends, and just kind of thought, okay, is this interesting? Do people care? And part of me was like, I don't really care if people care, because I want to talk about it. And I know that I'm a comedian, but I'm also so many other things. And I'm not one dimensional. Yes, I'm funny. Yes, I can do well on stage and I write and all these things. But I also am going through something very real and very relatable because it kind of plagues way more people than you think in the world. And it's been met with great attitudes. You know, I've been really lucky that people have like responded well to it. There have been a lot of people that have not responded well to it and have unfollowed me or have, you know, kind of said like, oh, this is triggering. Like this is too triggering for me. And that's fine. But for me, it feels cathartic. I feel like I can be myself. Even right now, like I've been talking to myself for I don't even know how long. And I feel good knowing that I can share this and just be honest with people about what I've gone through. So that's my story. That's where I'm at now. And there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more nuance to it, of course. And I'm sure I'll talk about that further in the pod. But one thing that I have been doing on this podcast is reading from my old Thinspiration Journal, because this to me is honestly fucking hilarious because it is just the most wild shit. And it's like literally a time capsule from when I was 16. And if you've been listening, you know that my therapist has challenged me to like read the entries and then write on the back of the entries what I feel now. So a lot of these are separated by like 12 years. So I'll read one to you now. I think I've done the first two. Let's see. Okay, yeah. This is dated. This is insane. This is dated January 2nd, 2013. God, I remember that was such a weird month because remember we all thought that the world was going to end in like December of 2012 because of the Mayan calendar or whatever the fuck. So all of us that night were like waiting on Twitter like what's going to happen? And then in January we just like went back to school and we're like, "Oh, everything's fine." January 2nd, 2013. Let's see what this says. It's getting easier. Sometimes I feel trapped by my own thoughts, but really I just have to stay positive because in reality, I'm not alone. Even just listening to music and drinking tea just make me feel better. Ew, I hate tea. I was gaslighting myself into thinking I like tea. I don't think I need to be so negative. I really just need to think happy to be happy, and it will eventually come. Sometimes it's hard because I get sad and all I want to do is eat, but it's not a solution. Food is not a solution. It's a problem. Wow. This time around, I feel a lot more relaxed about approaching my eating disorder. I feel more empowered to be able to make a smart decision about what I need to do. I know that it will be tough at times, but isn't that how life is supposed to be? Nothing is easy, really. If it was, everyone would be skinny and look the same and no one would be beautiful in their own way. I spelled beautiful wrong. It sucks because I don't have much confidence, but this is what I need to do in order to have it, and I know that. Bring it on, 2013. Reading this is really weird because you can tell that this version of me knows that having an eating disorder is dangerous. And like you can tell that this version of me knows that everyone is beautiful in their own way. But for some reason I'm like, well, but except for me, I have to be skinny. And the fact that I'm saying food is not a solution, it's a problem, is really indicative of my mindset at the time. Like I saw my eating disorder as the binging and the solution as the restricting instead of seeing the whole cycle as the problem itself. Because I just kept thinking, well, if I can just get rid of the binging and just, you know, restrict for the rest of my life, I'll always be thin and I'll just always say no to cake and I'll always say no to, you know, sugary coffees and I'll be fine. And the reality is that's not how life works. Everyone would be skinny and look the same. No one would be beautiful in their own way. That's wild. Okay, so on the back of this, let's see, April 15th, 2024. My handwriting is also way neater now that I'm 28. I got more boring. Okay, this says, sometimes food still scares me. Like last night, I ate a double scoop of ice cream cone and it was delicious. I couldn't help but feel slightly triggered by it, prompting my eating disorder to tell me I had to be quote unquote good today. But food is not a problem. It's nourishment, comfort, and celebration. Feeding my body is important to my health and overall happiness. I am working on my recovery. There are so many beautiful people in this world, and being skinny has nothing to do with it. Beauty comes from so much: your energy, personality, passion, style, how you treat others, etc. I am beautiful, and I am working on my relationship with food. It doesn't scare me as much anymore because I can feel that my body is much happier being fed. I'm not my body and I'm not my eating disorder. Oof. That's some... I wish I felt that way today. I walked in the studio all sad. I had a weird therapy appointment today. I remember April was a really good month for recovery. I'm not sure why. I don't know what happened in April. Maybe because it started to get warm in Denver. But yeah, it's really like crazy to see the difference, right? 16 to 28 years old. And it took that long for me to kind of realize, hey, I gotta do recovery, man. Like, this is not healthy. This is like really bad. So anyway, that's it, man. That's my story, and that's who I am, and that's why I started this podcast. I hope that one day I can look at this collection of information and perspectives and discussions and be proud that I did it, no matter how awful I was feeling or where I was in recovery, because I want people to see, and specifically young women to see, that you can do it, and that, hey, it's hard and it takes a long time, but it's worth it. Because I have met people that are in recovery and they've been doing it for like 10 years, and they are at a point that I look at and I'm like, oh my God, I can't fucking wait to get there. And I know that it's possible. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's also a lot of obstacles in the tunnel, but I've been training. Oh my God, now I'm doing metaphors like my boyfriend. Oh God, okay. I gotta end this episode. I'm gonna end this with an affirmation that I found today. I really like it. Okay. I bring value to this world no matter my appearance. Boom. That's it. See you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to My Body, My Jokes. Please be advised that the information provided in this podcast is for general discussion purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always, always, always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional with any concerns you might have regarding the topics discussed in today's episode. Also, if you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, please call the National Eating Disorders Association helpline at 1-800-931-2237. Bye.